Hello and welcome to LTWS Backstage Chronicles, where we take you behind the scenes of the Little Theater of Winston-Salem. I'm your host, Jessica Perry, and we're excited to bring you an inside look at the incredible people, productions, and creative process that make our shows come to life. In this episode, we'll be diving into A Christmas Carol, exploring the timeless appeal of Charles Dickens' beloved holiday classic. We'll be hearing from the director, the playwright, and the actor playing Scrooge himself. Whether you're a longtime Christmas Carol fan or discovering it for the first time, you're in for a treat. Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to LTWS Backstage Chronicles. It can be found on all major podcast platforms. And if you enjoyed today's show, please leave us a review. We love hearing from you. Now let's dive in. How's everyone doing today?
We're lovely.
Good. It's a beautiful day.
All right, here with me is the director, Jim McKinney.
Hi. They can't see me waving, can they?
We're also joined by playwright Charlie Lovett. And yes, hey, I'll talk over you. I'm sorry. And also, we're excited to have with us Robert Bullington, who will be reprising his role of Scrooge for the third year in a row. Congratulations.
Third time's the charm.
Until they get sick of me, I guess. Ride me out of town.
So this is very early in the process, as we just wrapped up casting. Can't give any spoilers right now. Well, technically we could. This is going to air after it's been announced.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, so if you want to spoil away.
Technically I really can't spoil away because tonight is the night that I'm dotting the final I's and crossing the final T's. People have not been really contacted to say, this is the role that we want to offer you, with the exception of Mr. Bullington, because I knew we had to get this podcast done before,
No,
that's why. Yeah. I thought it was because you wanted me so bad.
Well, I wanted you so badly, but I didn't want you prematurely, so.
So Charlie, you originally wrote this play for the Little Theater of Winston-Salem, and this is now the third time that you've seen this production produced, and it's with a new director, Jim McKinney. How have you seen this play kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Not transform. There we go. Transform over the years. How has it morphed and changed and different as each show goes on?
Yeah, I mean, I worked on it originally all by myself, and then I got together with the first director, Ben Baker, and he had some strict script suggestions, and we did some adjusting and some rewriting, and then went into rehearsal for the first year. And I watched some rehearsals and I watched some performances, saw a few things that I thought, oh, this might work better. Saw a few things that Ben and the actors added in that I really liked and incorporated into the script. And then, the same thing the second year. Last year, actually, one of the young actors came up to me and said, I've got this great idea. And I thought, sixth grader has a great idea. But it was a great idea. I mean, it added, 2 lines to the script, but it was a nice little moment that the audience will discover. If they've been the first 2 years, there's going to be some slight differences this year. So, and then just the other day, Jim and I sat down and went over the script and, made a few little edits to suit his vision of how this is going to come together. So it's definitely I see the script as a living document. I love being, I see a playwright as sort of like as an architect. You need an architect to build a building, but you can't build a building with just an architect. And it's such a collaborative experience. It's great to see what the different actors and now different director bring to the production to take it from just a stack of paper into this amazing experience that we all get to have in December.
I love that metaphor, the architect. Just in case nobody really knows this, but thank you for being here, Charlie, on this podcast, since you are all the way across the pond, as they would say, joining us. Well, what time is it there?
It is about 5 minutes after 9 o'clock at night. So the latest episode of the Great British Baking Show has just concluded. In the other room, I don't know who got kicked off because Janice, the erstwhile Ghost of Christmas Present, the first 2 years, is watching it in the other room. We're over here for a few more days.
So thank you, Charlie. Jim, so what is it like for you to come in and take this production and kind of how have you been able to make it your own?
Well, that has yet to be seen. I am able to do a lot of that. But to be quite frank, Ben Baker did a lovely job the first 2 years with getting this newly adapted play on its feet. I don't think that I'm going to veer too much away from his basic construct, the fundamentals of the blocking, the movement, and things like that. My job, I feared, was not to reinvent the wheel; it was just to make it run a little smoother. So Charlie and I worked together, as he previously said, on making a few minor edits, just to kind of tighten things up. And I'm going to be watching timing and length of the show, speed of the dialogue, crafting bits and moments that don't add too much to that, but will boost some of the comedic elements of the show. Because while it is a ghost story traditionally, I think it bears saying that it always benefits from a little bit of humor. We find ourselves in these interesting and unique situations facing ghosts. And while, yes, that's scary, there can also be some funny elements derived from that as well. So along with the ooh comes the ha.
So if you had to pick one of the three ghosts, who would you say is the funniest?
Without a doubt, it's a Christmas Present.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was
Not,
really
the
afraid
Phantom's
you'd
not
pick
really got
third
much of a.
No, not the
yeah.
Phantom. So this is a question for anyone. What do you think it is about A Christmas Carol, this story that's just so enduring, that's so lasting?
I'm going to let Rob answer that because as the third incarnation of his as Scrooge, and I know he loves the show. He's got to have some feelings on that.
This is actually my fourth Scrooge because before this production, I was once in the Anthony Newley musical version of Christmas Carol, which is called Scrooge. Do you know that?
I only know the film with
Yeah.
Albert Finney.
Oh,
the
I don't think
Scrooge
it's
film.
the same. No, this is
No, I
this
don't
is-
think
it's
so.
Anthony Newley. No, it has that song that goes, "Thank you very much."
Well,
Thank
they
you
do
very
use
much.
that
That's
in
the
the Scrooge film with Finney. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then maybe that is the
Leslie
one.
Bricusse, I think, directed that. Charlie, am I wrong or right on that? Do you know?
You guys you're talking over my head now.
Okay. At any rate, you had a question, Jessica, and I've forgotten what it was.
It's what makes A Christmas Carol so enduring.
Oh, well, I think for me, it's about. I think it's the idea of redemption, the idea that no matter how badly you might have messed up your life, that with the help of some spirits, Christmas spirits, that it's always salvageable. Everything is salvageable. Even Scrooge is salvageable. And to me, that seems like one of the things that Charlie is emphasizing in his play, because I've seen other versions of the story, of the Dickens story, where Scrooge kind of wakes up in the street and realizes, oh, everything's fine now, and he goes off to see Fred at his party, and the play's over. But Charlie's play kind of spends a lot more time with Scrooge after he wakes up from his experience, and going back to revisit his relationship with Belle, I think, is something that's really not in Dickens at all. Is it, Charlie?
No, I mean, I agree. I think the timelessness has to do with the fact that it's about redemption. I think this idea that it's never too late.
Yeah.
And there's a great hope in that. And I think hope is really what drives the play. But yeah, in Dickens, after Scrooge is redemption, if you will, after his transformation, and he wakes up, and there's about 3 or 4 pages, and that's the end of the.
He goes to Fred's house. Yeah.
I really saw this as a sort of a 3-act journey, and the third act is 2 pages long. And I thought the audience has gone through all of the darkness of Scrooge, being really unpleasant and gradually sort of clawing his way back to being a decent human being. And this moment where he confronts his own death, I feel like the audience has earned the payoff of enjoying seeing what the new Scrooge is like. And as Jim says, it gives you a lot of chance for comedy, because now you've got this classic comic moment that we can play in several different scenarios where everybody thinks this is one person, but in reality, he's a different person than who they are expecting.
Right.
And that's laden with some good comic potential. So I thought it was really fun to sort of play those out. I think it's in the spirit of Dickens. Keep in mind, he wrote this book in 5 weeks, and he never had a chance to go back and say, maybe I could make it even better.
Well, it had to be short enough that he could take it around and read it in one performance.
Yeah, right. And he even did down for that. So. So I thought there was the potential there to sort of add that third act in a little bit more. I think it is still very much about this idea of hope, and the difference with my script maybe is that you do see the results of the redemption rather than just being said, oh, he's redeemed
and everything's fine. Yeah. But at the expense of, this Scrooge in your play, Charlie, doesn't. Get as much time to be mean as some other Scrooges. I mean, the classic Bob Cratchit putting another coal on the fire scene isn't there.
Oh, but don't you worry, Rob.
Well, some of that is, that we knew we were designing for a space. I was writing a play for a space where having it be a unit set would be really helpful.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to play everything we could play out in the street.
Sure. That wasn't a criticism, Charlie. I was just making an observation.
No. But then also, I do feel like if you play Scrooge too dark and horrible, then the audience doesn't care if he gets redeemed.
Right.
If you play him as unredeemable, then the audience is not cheering for him. So there has to always be that little spark, and Rob is so good at delivering this, where you see behind those vacant eyes of Scrooge that there's humanity there somewhere deep down.
You can't have a broken heart without being human.
No.
And that was the root of everything for him. I think brokenhearted by being abandoned by his family was the genesis of this transformation of his into a darker person, and the loss of the love of his life added fuel to that fire. And so we watch a little bit of his downward spiral, and as you all said, we identify with that, the elements of that in our own life. And then when the reawakening happens and the grand self-forgiveness, which is what I think he actually goes through, not a spiritual forgiveness by an outside entity. He forgives himself, and that allows him then to be forgiven by others, and he opens up a darkened heart and lets the light in, and we all get to take a part of that, take part in that.
That's so powerful.
Giving me chills. Showing how that heart got darkened in the first place gives him a humanity.
Absolutely.
So there's a line very early on. So Scrooge, you may remember, Scrooge is a young boy sent away to boarding school. His parents can't afford for him to come home for the holidays. He's to spend Christmas all alone, And then the next year, his sister comes and says, Father's got a new job. Now we have some money. You can come home. And I put this line in for young Scrooge, and I try to tell the young person who's playing that role, slow down on this line because it's really important. He looks at his sister and he says, money makes all the difference, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You begin to see the seed of how he became so obsessed with money to the loss of everything else.
Well, and Scrooge sees it too. That moment I mean, everybody knows that it's coming and that it's going to happen, and it's just part of the Christmas Carol story. But if you think about how would you respond if suppose you're looking at a photograph of yourself at age 7, and all of a sudden it comes to life, and there you are, and you can see what you looked like and how you talked and that stupid shirt you were wearing, right? And then your dead sister comes in and you hear her voice. I mean, that moment, and it's early in the play. I mean, it's the beginning of Charlie's Act 2, right? But from that moment on, Scrooge is just, he's in. He's all in, you know?
Yeah.
He's so in that he tries, well, I don't want, without doing a spoiler, he tries to say, okay, I'm convinced at the end of Act 1, right? And then the Christmas present says, nope, I still got more things to teach you.
Yeah, you're not quite convinced enough.
Yeah.
Because you could slip, as you know, as people do.
Yeah.
You slip.
Well, as like an addict.
Yeah.
He's a money.
Yeah, and I do think it's important that transformation is gradual. It makes it so much more believable that as Scrooge goes along, he's learning little pieces of the lesson, you know, so that when he does wake up and say, "I'm all better now," you know, that's much more believable than the horrible person for 2 acts, and then in 10 seconds he becomes a nice guy, you know.
And we get to see that when he meets the little child on the street and asks him to go buy the prize turkey, is it, in the window? We get to see that because there's you've done a really nice thing with the little child at the end of the show, I think, Charlie, that is even stronger than what I've seen in any of the filmed versions, where the kid actually kind of says, "Are you sure you're not crazy?"
Yeah.
More or less, you know.
Right.
Wouldn't we rather have you institutionalized or something? I know you don't really say that, but that's what I kind of get from that, you know. It's very funny.
Yeah, I know. I love that kid. Are you all right? do you need help? I can go get a doctor.
Yeah.
So I really love about this show is like the messages. The subtleness of the show, and I'm having a hard time with my words right now, but it's like you said, it's hard for me to explain. I'm struggling with my words today. It's simple but not simple at the same time. It's amazing what you've done with this, and as y'all are talking, I'm learning more about every little detail that you put in. How many interpretations of A Christmas Carol did you go through to help you during this writing process?
So, I mean, I certainly knew Christmas Carol. I'd read the book. I've written a sequel to the book, so I knew the book really intimately because my sequel is in places almost a line for line, not exactly parody, but sort of tribute to the original in the style of Dickens. So I knew the text pretty well. And like everybody else, I'd seen it on stage. I'd seen the North Carolina Shakes version of it. I've seen the Scrooged movie with Bill Murray and, various other similar versions like It's a Wonderful Life. And, but when I sat down to write this play, I worked straight from Dickens, period. I didn't look at anything else. I didn't look at any other plays. And it was one of the only times in my writing life that I've actually worked a normal 40-hour week. I think it was during COVID. And so I had this time, but I was on the back porch at 9 o'clock every morning, and I took a short break for a sandwich in the middle of the day, and I stopped writing at 5 or 5:30 every night. And I finished a rough draft in a week. But that was the first draft, and that's really when the work starts. But so I was working straight from Dickens, but I was working also with this idea that I was adapting Dickens, but I needed you need to really understand when you're adapting something, the difference between the medium that you're adapting from and the one you're adapting to. It's the same thing when we did Escaping Dreamland for the Little Theater earlier this year. And the way you tell a story in a novel is very different from the way you tell a story on stage. You have lots of tools in a novel that you don't have on stage, and vice versa.
Charlie, did you workshop the play anywhere before you gave it to Ben Baker, or was that the very
No, I mean
first?
it's so funny because with Dreamland, we did lots of workshops and readings and things, and with this one, I literally just Phil said, "Can you write us a script?" And I wrote the script and said, "Here it is."
Oh.
Then Ben and I sat down and had one meeting, and Ben had been in some productions before. I think he'd played Bob Cratchit, and so he had some feelings, especially about that character, but about a few other things in the script. And I made some not massive changes, but some changes, to sort of fit his vision of some of the scenes and some of the characters. But most of the things that are the most different from Dickens were there from the beginning, because I read the book over very carefully and asked myself, what do you need to make this dramatic? What do you need to make this play out in 2 hours with an intermission, in front of an audience? And just as one example, everybody on the whole planet Earth probably, or certainly who speaks the English language, even if they've never read the book or seen the play or seen a movie, they know that line. They know that Tiny Tim says, "God bless us, everyone," right? Well, in the book, Tiny Tim doesn't show up, and it's a 160-page long book, and Tiny Tim shows up on like page 90. Like more than halfway through the book is the first stage time that Tiny Tim gets. And I just thought, no, I mean, the audience needs to be part of the thread of this story. He is, in many ways, Tiny Tim is the antithesis of Ebenezer Scrooge. He's the anchor of goodness and love and everything else. And so we need to see him in the first scene, and we need to see him throughout the play. And so he's in the first scene. But that's just one of the things that I thought, a play works differently from the way a book works. And you have to be aware of that. You can't just pull the dialogue out and say, okay, we're done. It has to really be adapted for the particular medium of the theater.
One thing I wanted to ask you, Rob. So I know as an actor, when you're doing a run of a show, sometimes you're still working characters or finding things up until like the last performance, and you're like, oh, I wish I would have been doing that from the beginning. But you have the unique advantage of reprising this role now for the third time. Yeah. So as you've done this role, are you still finding things?
Oh, yeah, and it's going to be completely different this time. It's going to be completely different. It was different the first two times, even though, like Jim said, the bare bones of it, the staging, the set, the blocking, the structure of the play is all the same, but the relationships are different. I mean, we had the first 2 years, the Cratchits that we had the first 2 years, completely different. Yeah. So doing that relationship becomes completely different. Playing those scenes is completely different, and obviously the different ghosts. I mean, Scrooge actually he has a relationship with each of these ghosts, that's very specific. And I don't know how much. It's been too long since I read Dickens. I read it 2 years ago when I was going into the first production of this. I need to read it again because I can't remember how specific Scrooge's relationships are with the ghosts. But in Charlie's play, they're very specific, and sort of open. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So whoever Jim has cast in these as these ghosts, and I don't know who they are this year, but I know they're not going to be. It's not going to be Janice, and it's not going to be the other people that it was. So yeah, it's exciting. It's a new ball game. It's a new ball game.
Yeah.
The only thing I have that the other actors don't have is I have a memory of having done it before, but that doesn't have any bearing on what we're doing right here now tonight in rehearsal, in performance.
Because every production's different, every show, every night.
Yeah,
even
every night's different.
Yeah, different audience, different energy. So
that's live theater. That's why we do it.
It's fun. It's the excitement. It's probably what gets you auditioning and doing the show and role multiple times.
Well, also that it's exciting because it can go sideways at any moment, right?
That element of danger and fear.
Absolutely. What did Carl Walenda said? The wire is life. The rest is just waiting around to get on.
Adapt and thrive.
That was somewhere before. Too soon? No, never mind.
So we've joked about. Oh no, what? You
Well, I
saying
was just
something,
going to say, a theater performance is a conversation between a group of actors and a group that calls themselves the audience. And if you don't have an audience, it's not a performance; it's just a rehearsal, right? And that audience is the actors may be the same every night, but the audience is different every night, so the conversation is different every night. That's what all of us who are involved in theater love about being involved in live theater.
Yes, the audience is such a huge part. They are essentially another cast member.
Yeah.
We have joked in making this podcast, and we named it Only Murders in the Season because we looked at our season and realized that there is either murder or attempted murder in some way, shape, or form in every show. And then we get the Christmas Carol, and we're like, not really murder. But however, we've decided to make up our own theory that Scrooge killed Marley to take over the business. So as what we would say, our resident Dickens expert here, like how probable is that theory?
Well, I mean, anything that's not on the page, you can extrapolate, right? I mean, I think probably the way I see the relationship between Scrooge and Marley, because we only see their relationship when Marley is coming back as a ghost. I like to see Marley as the last person who was really Scrooge's friend. The person who, even after Scrooge's heart turned dark as coal, Marley was still kind of there for him. Otherwise, why would he come back?
Right.
Why would he try to save him if he didn't care for him? And so to me, that's just another sign that Scrooge somewhere down in there is somebody who's capable of having a friend, who's capable of love.
But then, even then, doesn't Joe the Beadler or somebody later in the play say that Scrooge didn't even go to Marley's funeral?
It's true. That's true.
He was hard at work as Marley lay dying.
Yeah.
But I agree with what you say there, Charlie, and that gets back to what we were talking about previously, is that I think the reason Scrooge buried himself in the money changing in that moment was the pain of losing yet another friend, another chance, another little piece of something in his dark and dreary world. There was a connection for him, and that once that went, all he's got is not to give away too much, but all he's got are those fleeting glimpses of his lost love on the street, who he even turns a blind eye toward. So he punishes himself after that.
Scrooge is really good at the art of denial.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And what the lesson Scrooge thinks he's learned is don't love people because they're just going to leave you or die on you or turn their back on you.
Right.
And so I think his idea is better not to have loved than to have loved and lost.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Because the pain of loss has been so great for him that he finds it easier just to turn that part, just to turn his emotions off.
All right.
So knowing that he's going to lose Marley, how does he deal with it? He goes to work.
All right.
He pretends it's not happening. He's in denial.
Yeah, we see that in life, in our family and friends
We all
all
do.
the time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we don't think that Scrooge is necessarily capable of murder.
So we
However,
didn't say that.
well, we don't think he murdered Marley. However, in the beginning of the play, we can't call him a killjoy.
Absolutely. He kills your joy
Kills your joy.
every chance he gets.
So we're still keeping it in theme. No.
There you go. I'll murder happiness, so invite me to your party.
I mean, certainly there's plenty of death theme here. I mean, not only do we have the ghost of a dead person, and we see, Scrooge's grave in the future, but, the third word of both the play and the book is dead.
Yeah.
Marley was dead to begin with. There could be no question whatever about that. That's how the book begins. So, I mean, the idea of death is right there at the very beginning. And, it's where we all know that we're going to go, but ultimately this play shows you that there can be a lot of joy that comes between the cradle and the grave.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So And back to you, Jim. What made you want to direct A Christmas Carol?
Well, actually, I always, in my younger years, because I'm quite elderly now, in my younger
But still
years,
very handsome.
Oh, thank you very much. In my younger years, I always wanted to play Scrooge, and I figured, well, that's going to be my real role in my bucket list kind of deal, And as I matured and as I got older, I saw all the iterations on films and such that Charlie was talking about previously. All of those, and I said I got a little less enchanted with playing the role as much as just like watching my favorite, which is Albert Finney in the musical version Scrooge. And it wasn't Leslie Bricusse, he was a producer. It was Ronald Neame, I think, who directed it. I fell in love with that, and I watch it every year, and I cry like a baby every time I watch it. And Alec Guinness's portrayal of Marley, to me, is sheer joy. It's poetry in motion, and I may steal a little of that poetry and throw it into the mix with our Marley. So if I'm ever going to play a role, that would be the character I would play. And I don't think that really answered your question at all. So I should become a politician. It's the perfect time for that.
You kind of answered the question.
Okay.
Yeah, you get a chance to influence your favorite character.
Yeah, ruin a life or here or there, as the director. Live vicariously through Charlie and Rob and the rest of the actors.
So you already... go ahead, Charlie.
Jessica, you and I have both acted with Jim as a director, and so we know how much fun this cast is going to have.
Oh my goodness!
And what joy and delight he brings to the rehearsal process.
Oh my God, you're going to make me cry.
I've been so biased about this and telling everybody before, during, after auditions. I'm like, oh my goodness, Jim is so amazing to work with. Like you got to audition. He's going to be so wonderful to work with.
Oh, thank you guys.
I think that the ability to bring joy and delight to a rehearsal space is especially relevant in a show like this, which is not only a Christmas show, but it's a show that's got kids. And I love the fact that the show has actors of all ages in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So I think that makes it especially important that the process be, it's hard work, but that it be fun. So that the kids who are starting, maybe for some, it's their first experience in the theater. We want them to come back. We want them to still be doing little theater shows when they're my age and Jim's age and Rob's age.
I loved what you said to that kid last night. Use your Harry Potter voice.
Yeah. Well, he told me early on, I said, can you do a British dialect? And he said, I could do a Harry Potter.
When my kids were little, it was the Peppa Pig. Can you do your Peppa Pig voice?
But yeah, this, and I've really never worked with children per se in a show, directing them. So this is going to be a new experience. Thank God I've got some good people with me. Epi, Joe Torres, who is our stage manager, and Michael Loricella, who is our musical director. Both lots of experience with children. And I think de facto wise, probably Rob has a lot of experience with children as well.
Working with the kids has been great both years. And we've had remarkable kids.
It's so wonderful to see who gets cast, and I love working with the youth, and it's always really exciting when I've seen them come from like one of our youth productions, and then they audition for the show, and they get in Christmas Carol. I'm like, oh look, I know them. Oh, I'm so excited for them.
Jackson Colo.
Oh my goodness.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
Right? Did you see the Dog in the Nighttime?
Yes.
So he had been like. He was the oldest Cratchit boy or something.
The first year,
the first year?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and then that was the next thing that he did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he learned something.
He was passed last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and he
Yeah.
was phenomenal
He
as
was
Christmas Past as
Christmas
well.
past last year, yeah.
It's wonderful watching them grow and like evolve and as actors as they get older and grow into these bigger roles, and you just get so excited for them and you just want to cheer them on. You're like, yay, go to Broadway.
I did get a lovely little email from a parent of one of the children who auditioned for the show. I guess it was last week. And she said it was such a pleasure to hear him go on after they left the audition about how excited he was to meet us and get the chance to read for the show. And she said it's just a joy to see this spark in an adolescent, because they approach that age where nothing phases them.
Nothing's cool.
I
Nothing's
can't be
cool.
interested in that. I'm an adult now. So.
And it's a community theater.
Mm-hmm.
It's a community theater. So it draws from the community.
And you will see the community well represented in this production. I guarantee you, well represented.
One of the things that my wife Janice, who played Christmas Present the first 2 years, and is taking a year off this year, but is going to help out with the kids. But one of the things she said is, it's a tough show. It's a lot of performances over a period of time. And she said she would drag into that theater and just be like, oh, can I get up my energy for another show? I just did 2 yesterday. And the spirit of those kids and their excitement and their energy would just lift her up and propel her into that dress and onto that stage to be the ghost of Christmas Present.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to another season of A Christmas Carol. I'm looking forward to seeing new cast, some returning cast members, and see how this version is told. Jim, you already answered this question, but I was going to go around and I was going to ask this play excluded, what your favorite interpretation of A Christmas Carol is.
Oh, mine are...
You said that yours was with Albert Finney.
Yes, the musical Scrooge.
Musical
Right,
Scrooge. Yeah. Okay.
I like the Albert Finney too, but the first time I knew this story was the Mr. Magoo cartoon. There is a Mr. Magoo.
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that one.
So Mr. Magoo was I don't know if it was not Warner Brothers. I don't know which cartoon.
No, I think it might have been one
One of them.
Frailing to Fritz Frailing or something. I don't
can't
know.
remember. But so Mr. Magoo was this cartoon character, and there were cartoons about him, and he was like blind, and the humor came because he had great big glasses, and he would like drive his car through the shopping mall and things like that. And there was a version where Mr. Magoo was Scrooge. It's on YouTube.
I'll have to look that up.
That's when I first learned the story.
Wow.
And what about you, Charlie?
I'm less of a traditionalist. I go Muppets and Bill Murray.
That was
my
a good
goodness.
one, yeah.
I did, I know Scrooged, the Bill Murray film is not, exactly Dickens, but there's some really lovely moments in that film, and
There
especially
is.
the end.
There.
And it does, he certainly does bring out the humor, as Jim said.
And Bill
And
Murray
then-
is great at the redemption arc.
Yeah. And then I'm a sucker for the Muppets, so what are you going to do?
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you all for being here today. Do we have any final words that we'd like to share?
Come and share the joy of the holiday season and let us warm your hearts with Christmas Carol at the Little Theater of Winston-Salem.
And make your reservations early.
Absolutely. It always sells out.
Always.
Seen it before, it'll be different. And if you haven't seen it before, you don't know what you're missing until you come and join us. Yeah.
And thank you, Charlie. Really appreciate you taking the time to be here with us today.
Absolutely.
And our love to Janice.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's all for today's episode of LTWS Backstage Chronicles. We hope you enjoyed this behind-the-scenes look at A Christmas Carol. A huge thank you to our guests for sharing their thoughts and insights. Really lovely having you both, all three of you, with us today. 2 in person and 1 via Zoom. If you like what you heard, please don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share this podcast. And like I said before, you can find it on all major podcasting platforms. And of course, visit our website at www.ltofws.org for more updates on upcoming productions and events. Stay tuned for our next episode where we'll be exploring family dynamics and relationships in What They Have. We'll dive into the emotional layers of this production with the director and some key cast members, so don't miss. Until next time, I'm Jessica Perry. Thanks for joining us here with the Little Theater of Winston-Salem. A special shout out and thank you to Such and Such Media, our 90th season media sponsors. Yay! We'll see you at the theater. The views and opinions of this podcast are those of the contributor and not necessarily those of our distributors and hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted. Use of this podcast without express permission may result in alien blood-sucking plants taking over the world. You have been warned.